The final segment for the Breckenridge design project on framing is to address the wall framing. In the design you can see that all of the framing is completed here, and then with the wall framing, the final process, this is a layout sheet inside the construction drawings. You can see how I put this together. Let's go through the process of creating our wall framing in the design. Framing that we've done so far with the ironwork and the trusses, a lot of this is pretty custom, and when we use the program to generate the automatic framing, it's going to do a pretty good job, but there will be cleanup that we need to do. So let's explore the process. Under the build menu, I'm going to go to framing, build framing, and I'm going to choose the wall framing. I'm not going to put it on automatics because once I generate the wall framing, I'm going to go in and do some cleanup. And we're going to see a few issues in here, but generally it did a pretty good job of framing most of the components, and you can see that there's a couple of things coming out from that i-joist and that wall connection, especially given that this wall coming down from the attic connecting in here has generated a few things. So let's go ahead and take a cross-section view and see how we can go about cleaning this up. On floor 1 from the floor plan view, if I click on a wall, there's a framing detail, open wall detail, and you can open up individual framing walls and make the necessary adjustments to the framing. This one looks good. Let me go up to the second floor and check the wall above it. I think we saw some issues in the 3D view, and I just need to do some cleanup in here. And I'll just click on a few of these objects in here and remove them, and then go ahead and make the necessary adjustments. I'll click on this plate, just pull this down until it snaps onto the edge. So a little bit of busy work in cleaning this up. Again, some of the framing that we did was in adding these things. I've had my windows bump right up to the top plate so I don't have any extra headers. And once you get that cleaned up, that looks pretty reasonable. Close that wall detail. And you can go around, if I click on this wall here, and go through and clean up the different walls as you make your way around the design. Now some of the walls are fairly large walls or attic walls that may not be possible to click on very easily because there may not be any framing in there. Notice this attic wall has no framing information. So one of the things that I'll do is I'll run a cross section. Let me just actually use the back clip cross section and show you a little trick that I do. I'm going to run a back clip cross section right through that wall in the front, and you can see part of the wall. And back in the floor plan view, let me close my other camera so we can split our screen here. I'll hold Shift F6 down on the keyboard and zoom in on this camera. If I select this camera and open it up for the details, under the plan display, I can put the camera on both sides as a call out, and if you want to label your call out, in my case I've got section 15, which is the default. This camera is now adjustable, and I can actually use the brake component on here. Notice that it's selected. Down in the lower left hand section there is the brake tool, and number 3 on the keyboard is a shortcut to that. If I click that and click on the camera, I can now adjust that and cut it through so you can actually see both of the framing components at the same time. I have a little bit of cleanup to do in this area, actually quite a bit of cleanup. I'm just going to go through here and delete some of these objects. I'll just pull this over here a little bit so I can grab the other object, and I'm just going to do my cleanup here and remove these items. Still much faster than creating the original framing. It's a very complicated framing job. So just going to pull this over, snap it into place, and then where the post comes into play, got a couple of framing members. I'm just going to remove those framing items out of the post area and delete this framing member underneath. Pull these up to the top, and again a little bit of busy work to clean this up. Notice that I'm missing a bottom plate off of the windows. Some of my windows I've marked to not have a header because I want the steel beam to have carry the load, and so that's why there is no header beyond this steel beam. I'm going to actually copy that element up above for the plate, and I'm just going to pull it down and snap that on top, and then pull this over and use that and correct that. It's a little bit of time involved. It's usually the last step that I'll do in cleaning up the view of framing on a fairly complicated design like this. If you look at my section view, you'll notice right in the middle of the screen there's a big white space in here. And back in the floor plan view, if I can generate that, I've turned it on where the roof framing is in here. And my camera, you can kind of see there really isn't a good way to get this roof section, which is maybe difficult to see on your screen, but the roof overhang overlaps, and it may actually be easier just to see this in the full framing overview. It overlaps, and to get that cross section to cover both the overlap of this roof and the overlap of this roof is pretty difficult. And if you look at my construction drawings, I actually was able to get that, and the way I did it was to take my cross-section view, pull it over, and then I basically did a screen grab at Cad To View, and then I overlaid that as a CAD detail. And just to fill in, you notice if you zoom in here, I've got a line on this rafter, and that's basically where I filled that space in from using the Cad To View option. If you're not familiar with the Cad To View, if I go back into my floor plan and select this camera, and I'll just pull it over so we get that full roof overhang right in this area. Now you can see that I've got that roof overhang, and using the Cad To View, select CAD Detail from View, and now you can see it just does a screen grab, and these are just lines. And all I did was isolate these sets of lines. Just kind of show you how I did that. I really only care about this area right in here. If I zoom in, again, these are just lines. Pull this line back, snap it into place. It's going to form a polyline, which you can see back in here. And once I select that, again, let's pull that back and connect it. And now I basically have a full polyline that I can now manipulate and edit. And I'm just going to slide that up and do the same thing with the other polyline here. Let's just pull this down and connect it. That way I have the i-joist outline in the same area. Those two items here, I'm going to group select them, copy them. I'll go ahead and make a block out of them, but I'm going to hit the copy button here. Go back into our cross-section view, and from the floor plan, let's adjust that camera back so that it captures the upper portion of the curved roof. And you can see from my back clip cross-section view, which will get cut off once I trim that up, but I can now paste and hold that block into position, and it's going to allow that to be pasted right over the top of it, because if I come over to the floor plan view here and pull this back clipping, it may clip off some of the view depending on what you're doing, and it's just an easy way to be able to fill in that space, being able to do a Cad To View, especially in a view like this. I've worked my way around and cleaned up all the different framing components. I've also added the different call-out sections. Go back into my floor plan and my elevation view here. You can see here is one of the elevations that we created. I've turned on my labels for my headers, and you'll notice if I zoom in and out that I get some flashing. This is that cross-section view. I drew a white box over the top of it, and so when I send it out to my layout, I get a nice crisp view of exactly the view that I'm after on my layout sheet. Now, if you're following along and have downloaded the sample plan set and change your layer set to framing set, you can open up these different cameras that I've created here and see exactly how I've done this. And one of the things that I've done in this case is I've changed my section view to use the 3D framing set. That way, underneath your defaults on layers, when you are running a section, you can change your cross sections. In this case, if you choose it to be the 3D framing set, then you can isolate and get that camera every time when you do your view. And in my plan view, you can see the different wall details that I've opened up. Let me open up this backside camera. You can see what it looks like. Again, you can download the sample plan and open up the different cameras that I've done. This is another cross section. It had a gap in here. If you zoom in, you'll see a line on my rafter. You may also see a line on my curve. That's because I pieced those sections on this layout sheet and camera so that I get the exact view, even though there is an overlap with those two roof planes. The other thing that I've done in all of the views is I've added blocking. You'll find a framing blocking tool in here. You can add your blocking. If you open up a particular wall back here in my floor plan view, and the wall detail, you'll see a wall bridging tool. If you want to add bridging in here, you can come in and set it to be staggered or in line with that. And it looks like I already had that layer or that item on, just not that layer, so I'll just remove that. And that's how I created my wall blocking in all of those views. So that should wrap up the framing section of the video. And again, the process that we went through was creating our garage and our I-beams. We started at the bottom and worked up, placing our floor trusses, then our curved roof beams and I-joists that sat on top of those, then the iron, and then finally our wall framing. In each one of those segments in the video, you can review and download the plan and follow along. Next in the video series, we'll be addressing placing the terrain and the different features of terrain that we have in the plan.